It's Drybear. And as is tradition with a Souls-like game, Lords of the Fallen is very cryptic and confusing. There's a lot of things that you could miss on your first playthrough that just don't make a lot of sense, or you just don't even know exist in the first place. And so today I'm going to go through things that I wish I knew sooner in Lords of the Fallen, how to get lots of vigor very, very quickly, how to get boss gear and weapons, all of the different currencies that exist in this game. This is one of the most currency dense Souls-like games I've ever played, with how many different currencies you can pick up, plus how many different shops you can actually spend them on to get different pieces of gear for your playthrough. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Now, the first thing I want to cover is getting boss loot. It's a very common trope in Souls-like games to be able to defeat a boss, go to a vendor, and use that boss's drops for special gear, usually a weapon, but in many cases, this gets varied in a couple ways. Lies of P had amulets you could get per boss, but there is a boss vendor in Lords of the Fallen, but it's insanely easy to miss without knowing where you're going. So if you're in the main hub of Skyrest Bridge, you'll want to enter the Umbral and come up here to talk to this big fella as the vendor himself. This is Molhu. You will be able to offer remembrance of a boss you've defeated. I've just restarted here. You'll be able to buy the loot from these bosses. However, in order to unlock this boss vendor option, this vendor is always here, but in order to offer remembrances, you have to find a bowl of revelations in the world, and if you walk right by it, you'll never be able to do it. But it's easy enough to get. Go to Pilgrim's Perch Bell Room as a warp point early in the game. Once you're at this vestige here, go right down this hallway and you'll follow all the way out to the outside, and you're looking for a platform that only exists inside of the Umbral that will have a Bowl of Revolutions item in the middle of it. For this, you want to be in the Umbral, so just go ahead and enter into the Umbral by dying, or enter it using the lamp itself. You'll have the pathway shown for you. And what you're looking for is down here below on the middle of the platform down there, you'll be able to find the Bowl of Revelations. And as you come down to the pit, it should be in the very middle as one of those special items that you can use the Soul Flay to activate. And once you have this, you can go give it to Molhu and turn it in and be able to activate the boss weapon vendor. Now, bosses give a large amount of loot. You can even kill the tutorial boss for a ton of loot. Sometimes they'll give their entire set of armor, a weapon, spells, all kinds of things. But the currency that you need to spend in order to get this is going to be Umbral scourings. And you get these several ways. First is by killing bosses in your world, or by doing co-op with other players. So if you join another player's world and help them kill boss, you'll get Umbral scourings as well. But you'll also get it by soul flaying stigmas that you'll find in the world. They look like this, and you'll find one after every boss. You want to make sure that you soul flay these in order to get the lore, but also because you get loot for it. It'll play out a certain cutscene for you, some kind of history in the world that you're in. But do this after every boss. This is how you get the remembrances in order to turn them in at the boss vendor in order to get the boss loot for yourself. You can also kill the red Grim Reaper that you get inside of the Umbral in order to get more Umbral scourings if you need them. Next is how to respec your character. As with any RPG, you may find that the class that you chose or the playstyle that you chose at the beginning of the game is not the one that you were looking for long term. There is a way to respec your character in the game, but there's a couple things you need to know about this, as it is quite restrictive in Lords of the Fallen. First, the first boss that you will kill and bring to the main area is going to be Pieta, and she is how you respec your character. So you'll walk up to her and do Chrysalis Rebirth. That is how you respec. However, it does require a special resource in order to activate this. You can buy exactly one of these from Molhu here, the boss vendor, inside of his actual shop. You'll be able to buy one and use it. As far as I know, the only other way to get the item you need in order to respec your character is by using the Shrine of the Putrid Mother, which is right next to Molhu inside of this boss area. And you come over to this vendor, this little pedestal, and you purchase. And you need to unlock tier 2 in order to be able to buy them for 75 of this currency, which I honestly have not reached yet. I'm not sure how you even get this high. You have to kind of focus on it, but it is there inside of this if you're looking for it. If you're wondering how to get the plucked eyeballs, you have to do the red lamps inside the world. You'll find them laying on the ground. You have to soul flay them. When you pull them back, you'll be able to get an elite enemy that gives you the plucked eyeballs. If you kill them, then you just kind of have to wait for that to clear, stack up over time as you go through the game. Next is to take full advantage of the unique aspects of Lords of the Fallen that not every Souls game has. You're looking at things like light attack, heavy attack, block, parry, roll, and dodge, but there's actually some unique items in this that you don't see in too many games, and that's stance swapping and special attacks. So firstly, you can do your light attack, heavy attack, you can do your block, and if you do block and your light attack at the same time, you'll do a kick, which can stagger enemies if they're low on poise. On top of that, there's also a special attack for every enemy, and that's if you do your block and your heavy attack at the same time, it'll do a special attack that's unique to every weapon, and this even changes whether you're two-handing or one-handing the weapon, or if you have dual wield. And the stance swapping is kind of a cool system that's really fun to play around with. If you press Y or triangle on your respective controller, you'll be able to one-hand or two-hand your weapon. This is pretty standard. However, Lords of the Fallen allows you to swap between these in mid-combo. So you can swing with two-handed, swap to one-handed, swing with two-handed, swap to one-handed. And as you're going, you can see that as I press that button mid-combo, it allows me to switch between the two. And as long as you hit that button, you can switch between them, which is pretty fun and actually leads to a lot of really fun opportunities for combos, especially if you're dual wielding. You can dual wield with two, swap to a single for two hands, swap back, and this is seamless as you're going through. You just have to hit that triangle or Y button. So if you are a Souls-like veteran, you're playing the way you normally play, try messing around with this system. Do the special attacks, try out multiple combos, switch between one hand and two hand, try out dual wield. I think there's a lot of really fun mix-ups that you can do in this game that is pretty unique to Lords of the Fallen. Next, I want to talk about vigor farming, which is the XP or the currency in this game that you use to buy items and level your character up. There are several ways to get this in mass if you really want to, that are probably easier than most games like this that you'd be looking for. So let's go through some options you have for farming this very quickly. And the first one is the most egregious and the easiest because it's actually an AFK farm, and it takes advantage of a bit of a bug with how the spawning works for the Red Reaper. So use this at your own discretion or use it until it gets fixed in an official update. But first, you want to go to Pilgrim's Perch Bell Room, the same one we went to earlier. And instead of going right this time from the vestige, you're going to go over to the left. Now, you can use these guys as decent farm. You can knock these guys off of ledges. You can let them fall off themselves. You can soul flay them, and it is decent farm. But for this, we're going to want to be in the Umbral because we're going to be farming the Red Reaper that comes for you if you are in the Umbral for too long. Now that we're in the Umbral, we're going to go from this platform all the way over to these floating platforms on the far side from the vestige. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to go over to this floating platform, and we're going to walk over to a very special spot that is very easy to stand on. And once you stand there, you'll be able to just sit and AFK and farm tons and tons of vigor. We're going to go to the middle here, and what we want to do is we want to get all the way up to this middle platform and walk all the way to the wall. So you want to get to about like right on the very edge of this. Make sure your character's kind of hanging off the edge right about here, and then stand next to this pillar, and then you can just go AFK. Now, what happens when you sit in the Umbral for too long in the top right corner, you can see that you're getting more of a scalar on the amount of vigor that you can farm. And what happens is if you stand in this floating platform, the Red Reaper will spawn, being unable to get you, and it will just spawn on this platform on the far side and then instantly die. And in the beginning, the first 10 to 15 times you kill the Red Reaper, it will give you about 13,000 vigor plus some scourings. And if you could just leave this on as long as you want, as long as you don't move from this spot, it'll just keep spawning and dying and spawning and dying. You can farm infinite amount of vigor until this specific exploit is fixed. Now, keep in mind that the more you kill the Red Reaper, the less value you get from it, and eventually it will kind of hit a bottom floor, but it's still an AFK farm that just goes on forever and ever the more patient you are. So you can leave it on overnight if you really wanted to get a crazy amount of vigor, if you care that much about what level you are or what you buy from vendors. There are some key items you can buy from vendors to open up doors and unlock things, which can be quite useful. Now, if you don't want to go the cheesy route, obviously being in the Umbral is one of the best ways to farm vigor, because as you're in the Umbral and it goes longer and longer, the more the multiplier goes up, and eventually you can just farm a large amount of vigor. And what you can do if you really want to practice is you can actually just get the Red Reaper to spawn on you and get him to fall off a cliff, which is quite easy if you just dodge the right way or give a nice knock to him. He's kind of hard to fight one-on-one and has a lot of resistance, but if he falls to his death, there's nothing that you have to do about that. He just dies and gives you the amount that he has, or you can just farm mobs regularly and just find things that can be knocked off cliffs, or use explosives to kind of take them down and then go back to a vestige and farm if you want to do it that way. I should also mention that there is a duping glitch in the game as well, so you can find the items that give you vigor and then just dupe them over and over. I haven't looked too much into it as well, and it's hard to track down exactly how this works. So if you're interested in that, I'm sure you can find other creators or other resources online that explain exactly how to dupe items. The last thing I'll leave you with is that you should be checking the Umbral often. We talked earlier about how you can miss the Bowl of Revelations if you don't check it while you're inside the Umbral. Key items show up like that all the time. Things that help you improve your self-healing flask that you'll get in order to make yourself heal more or get more charges of it. Those things tend to be in the Umbral only, and special items exist there specifically that you'll want to focus on. But it doesn't just stop there. I'm using this footage here to try and avoid too many spoilers, but if you can see here when I'm walking around in the Umbral, in the footage we just looked at, these little tendrils here weren't showing up at all because they were in the normal living world. But in the Umbral, in this boss fight, there's these little tendrils poking up out of the ground everywhere. And they actually use this constantly in many different locations, and these are only viewable in the Umbral. You can use them to remove statuses from bosses or get them to change their state to give you a more favorable outcome. That's all I'll say about it, as this does show up in many different forms in the world. But you want to be using the Umbral as often as possible. If you are in the world of the living, just be sure to check it often by bringing up your lamp, or just enter into the Umbral to not only get more vigor, but also to be able to check to see if there's any good loot, rare items, or things in a boss fight that might make it easier for you to complete. And that's what I've got for you today. If you found value in the video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and I'll see you on my live stream. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.